Okay, so here we are at the end of exercise 9, and so in this next exercise we want to create a view, a time distance diagram, solely to show only the things that are happening in the design section 6C. So that involves us interacting with the view menu up here, and first of all, this menu can be grouped and sorted, so each view can have a grouping character and can have a sort number. So if, for example, rather than the default view here, just as a flat list, we can group it by character. So in this view, I have previously entered a name for the folder that I want it to be contained in and a sort order that it will be listed by. So that's just to help, I think, group things in a better way. And if I right mouse click on the name views, I can add a new view. And the name of this view, as suggested by our task, is that we're going to create a design section 6C only. And the sort of view we want is an integrated view, time and distance. You can have a regular Gantt chart with time as an axis, or you can have a Gantt chart, interestingly, with location as an axis. You know, a list of tasks, a list of links, a list of resources, a list of costs, a list of progress steps, a list of task notes and print forms for Gantt charts, and micro progress. So we're going for the integrated view. We want to put it in the same folder as the other one, so I'm got to put exactly the same characters in there, and I want it to be listed below it, not alphabetically. So if we now open that in the active window, we get the minimum information about a view. So there's a central cell, which if I click on the tabs below, and there's an outer cell, and you cannot delete any of these. This is the minimum. So in this central cell, we're going to make this our time distance cell. And so from the cell settings type, we're going to choose time distance cell. That's the type of cell that it is. And it's always good to name these things so we don't forget later, or if we're ill, somebody else can understand what's happening. And to say which sub-project, so here are our sub-projects. We've only got one at the moment, but we will have another in the next lesson. So in the cell contents, we click on this icon, select cell content, and it presents us with a list of these sub-projects. There's only one in this particular case, but we could select more than one, and it gives us the option of selecting the range from what we've put in that whole view, but we don't want to do that. So we're going to say no, because we know the distance range and the date range that we want to put in it here ourselves. So it's going to end at 21 miles. So we need to put the end distance in first, because it can't be, the start distance can't be greater than the end distance. And our end start distance is 18 miles, 1,000 yards. Our start date is going to be the 7th of May 2016. So there's some of our tasks already, and our end date is going to be the 13th of February 2017. So that's looking at the existing data, slicing it out, so we're only looking at the events that are happening between these changes and between these dates. We want our low change to be on the right and our high change to be on the left. So we need to, and so it's always by default drawn from low change to high. And to switch it around, you merely tick on this distance axis descending. You don't swap these values around. The end always has to be bigger than the start. You let the system do it by ticking on this particular option. So the thing that I do next is I want to see the physical size of this in relation to the page. So I reduce the zoom scale to something smaller, and I set the page size to be how I think it would be best to display it. So having it as a A3 portrait would be a good thing to start with, to aim for, and clicking the display pagination lets us see those dotted lines on screen. So then we can use these teeth around the outside to set the size of it to be something. So we're going to want a tight margin all the way around. Apart from, then we're going to stretch it out, so it's going to cover this size, and we're going to go this far. We want to put a legend and things going on over here. We're going to probably add a few things later, but we get in the right ballpark, and it's always good to start out well, because then it means that the font sizes we're looking at are going to be more realistic. So that's a top tip from me at this point. Okay, well, we can, in the time distance cell itself, reuse some of the things we've already done. So we previously created a grid, so we can display that grid on screen. So we've got our drop lines showing us every mile, etc. We've also got a time grid which was for years and weeks, so we've also got that. So we can obviously reuse some of these things very readily. Now at the top of the screen we want to display our symbol map, so it's worth just going back to our original view, and we want to put this map. So what we need to know is what is the name of the cell content. So this is map 2. So and this is a distance item, and it's the cell contents list. So there it is in the list, map 2. We want to use the same one in our new view, so then we won't have to re-enter all of the things that we've done before. I notice I've just made a spelling mistake, so we can edit that view name and correct it after the event, or change any settings. And indeed, the view layout gives us the physical size in centimeters of the different cells that we've already created. So to create a new cell for the top or the left of the only cell, we have to select the outside cell, not just the central one, but the outside one. And using the cell menu option, we're going to add a new row. So there's a cell that didn't exist before. If we click on that, we're going to say that this is our 6C map. We know that this must be a distance cell, so we can preset that. We know that it's going to have the content of map 2, so we know, and that shows everything. And it shows everything because the distance range of this cell is really big, much bigger than our cell below. So we want the upper cell to inherit the lower cell's distance range, and that's what the master cell idea is about. We want this cell to inherit the distance range of this cell, so it only shows the overbridges and stations and underbridges that are relevant to this particular section, and that's the advantages of using a symbol map. Okay, so now underneath this cell we want to add a new cell, which is a distance ruler. So we select the row that we want the cell to be located underneath, and again from the cell menu, or indeed from this drop down, we can add a new row. So that's added a new row under here, and in that row we're going to create a brand new ruler that we haven't used before. So the easiest way of doing that is to use this icon. Cell wizard creates new cell content. If I click on that wand icon, I choose a sort of cell type. So this is going to be a distance cell. Okay, I want to make new content, and I want to have a starting point that's got a distance scale, and I want to call that scale 1 mile to 20 yards, because I want that to appear in the library with a sensible name. And it's going to inherit its distance settings from the cell below. So it's created it on the left. I've obviously done that before and so I'll get rid of that one. So if I click here, we can see now we've got 3 tabs, and the final tab gives us access to each of these rows. I find it easier to double click on this, or with that row selected, click on the properties button to get to this point, because we can see more of it. So I'm going to call this mile. So if we want to use that in a legend, we can. I want to delete that section there, and using the F8 key, I get a pop-up, and what I want to put in that pop-up is just the word mile. So it'll just show me a number, and I need to add any text that would describe what the unit is. But what I want to do then, of course, is that the interval, the frequency, needs to be every 1m. So we're doing it every mile. We're going to place the text. Well, I think I'll show you this on screen, as you can see it happening. This is where we place the text. This is the font size, so I think I'll go for 10 and click on OK. So the alignment at the moment is after the line, so it's placed just after the line. So we could say, if we had it on the line, so that would be exactly where 20 miles starts. So if we have it before the line, it's just to the right of it. Remember, our distance descending, so we're going from low to high, right to left. But if I do it centered after the line, then it centers it between the 2 mile posts. So now we want to add a new row, and we do that down here by clicking on the plus button here, add a new line on this dialog. And so this is going to be for every 220 yards. That's just a descriptor. And this is here, we delete that, press F8 again, and we choose yards in a mile. We don't want the mileage in yards as well. We don't want to use yards. That's how many yards from the origin. This is how many yards in this mile. And so we've got to say, obviously, the frequency. So we're saying every 220. And we're going to say, let's also maybe have an 8 point. We want to make the height of the row a bit deeper, because we're going to spin it through 360 degrees. So if I say OK now, then you can see we've got what is the yardage at that particular point. Okay, so we have to close this up ourselves. If you go too far, you get the 3 dots, it can't display the text, and you come down to see a little bit more. So there we've created our new ruler. But we're going to add another row, so I'm going to get a bit of space so you can see it. We're going to add a new row down here, and we're going to use our information from our design sectors. So I'm going to call this row area. I'm going to say, well, it's not a regular number that we're after, it's a value from the spreadsheet that we imported earlier called design sections. So if I look at the detail of that, to remind you, we've got 6C, it's between these 2 values, and it will only give us a value in that point. If we tick this, only the values from the profile, use the background like the sector color. I might want to make the font white, 10 point bold, because the background is a sort of dark red, and what we want to display in there, F8, is from the sector. We want the name of this sector in that table. So there, we've got that information, but now we want to choose to locate that in the right place, and it's center before the line in that case. And so there you go, you've got the same presentation, and we're showing a little bit of 6D and 6B just to give this some context, so you can see things happening right next to you. So we've done that ruler, and we can click on save to do that. Okay, so now we're going to make a time ruler on the left hand side. So this will be a timed content, so we're going to have it at this point. I think I've done that before, so I'm going to get rid of it. So on the, we again have to select the outer cell, And with the outer cell selected, either from this pictorial buttons or from the cell column, we're going to add a new column, and it's going to put it on the left hand side. So here's a column we didn't have before. We want to turn that into a new time area, and I want to call so again we're going to use the wizard that's going to lead us to this situation. We want to choose a time cell. We're going to say OK. We're going to create and display content that's at a time scale, and we're going to call it 4Ys, because that's what we're going to show: a 4-digit year, a short month name, the day the week starts, and the week number on network rail week number. And so when we say OK, we're going to inherit the time range from the cell to our right, and it puts the starting point in there and creates it in the library. So if I select it again, I now get the 3 tabs as before. We've got 1 row already. And again, I find it easier to double click on this row, or with the row selected, choose the properties of it, because we want to give this a name, which is going to be used in the legend. So I'm just going to type year. I want to get rid of the text that's there already and press F8. And so from this list of time units, I want to choose year with 4 Ys, because that's a 4-digit year. The frequency, we're going to show that is every year. We want to use a 10-point font, and we're going to spin it around through 90 degrees. So then if we say OK, then you can see on the left, we've got the year, and that's where the year boundary is. So there's nothing else further to do. But now we're going to add a second new row. So over here on the right hand side, we're going to press the plus button. We're going to call this one month. We're going to get rid of that, press F8 again, and find months with 3 M's. So that a month with 2 M would be January would be 01, month with 1 M, January would be 1, month with 3 M's would be Jan, month with 5 M's would be January. So it depends how much space you've got really. And again, we're going to choose 10 point, spin it through 90 degrees, and the frequency is month. It's always a calendar month boundary. So you could show periods, but that's going to be very similar to how we do the network rail week numbers. So we want now a plus sign. Again, we're going to repeat that, and we're going to this is going to be called week commencing, because we want the Saturday date of every week. So I'm going to press F8 again. So we want the day to be displayed. I'll choose double D, so 01, it will be 01, not just 1. The frequency is week, but we need to choose the day of the week when it will start. So any Saturday, just choose any Saturday from that list, and that'll do that. I don't think we need to rotate it. I think 10 point will probably still be okay. And then if we say okay, we've got the day of the week, Saturday, that starts. Now we want to have another row now, which is our week number. So it's network rail week number. So if I just leave calendar week in there for you to see for a moment, and our frequency is every week, and if I say okay, that's the calendar, the number that we find in our diary. So when we get to the end of the year, week 52 in January, it starts at week 1, depending when the first Thursday in January falls. So that's the sort of international rules, but we've got different ones, and those different ones are not predictable and can only become from a spreadsheet. So I've got a spreadsheet that's got week commencing and a week number, and this is in the data file that we've been using called TILOS data import sheet for network rail OHL, and it's got every week number and dates, and you need the format where you've got a date, and then you've got a bit of text. And so you can also do that with the periods. So here are the periods. So we could put periods in the same way. So with that, the the area that we want selected, the date range. I copy that to the clipboard. I've got that flashing surround. I go back to my calendar line and I just get rid of that reference. We don't want the calendar week number. What we want, if we go down here at the bottom, is we want to put in additional points. And if we click on import points from clipboard, if it's that format, date, and a bit of text, it will place those and it will be displaying the piece of text. We do also need to make sure it's the same day of the week that the tick mark occurs on. And then if we say OK, we've got our network rail week number. So when we go to the end of the year, we're only at week 39 in our company's year. So that's how we can accommodate that section. We have to manually set the width of this so that we need to just make sure we can see everything there. And in this area here at the top, these are little cells as well, created when we insert a new column. We want to take this cell and merge it into this one, so there's enough area to put the descriptors about what these columns are. So if we have that cell selected and go to the cells menu, there's a section there called connect cells. So with the currently selected cell, I can connect it to the one above, or to the left or the right, etc. So we're doing the one above, so we can just about get it in there. If we wanted to do that again, we could do, so we could merge it a second time up and have it in the whole area. But we can also control the size of the font, and that's on the first tab down here. The display and legend button leads to this area where we can choose to show the legend at the top, at the bottom, outside or inside, rotate it, or choose the font size that we're going to use for the legend text. So that's how we can do that at that particular stage. So we've now created a ruler, and that ruler is in the library. We could use it again in another cell. So we could include a cell on the right hand side, and we don't have to create that ruler again. We can reference it, but the columns would be in the same order. So a good tip is to copy and paste it once you've created it, rename it, use it again somewhere else, and then once you've used it, reorder the copy. So that's the quickest way of generating that. So also this outside cell, we want to designate that as a graphic cell, because if it's got no cell type at all, no content, we can't do anything in there. We can't put a text or graphics or logos or anything. So we need to again use the wizard to say that we want this to be a graphic cell, and we want to create new cell content that's not in the library already, which I'm going to call 6C border. So it's going to be unique to this cell, and so now I can put things there. So and the first thing I want to put there, which we haven't done before, is I want to create a legend. So if we look at the fourth button up from the bottom here and hover the mouse, it says insert task legend. I want to have scaling in both directions, and I want it to be connected to the top right. I'm going to draw a box and it creates a grid as I do so. And now I get 3 tabs on the bottom of the screen. Principally, first tab tells us where everything is located by measurement. Second tab allows us to say I want to have 2 columns. So if we're putting it at the bottom and stretching it horizontally, we only want 1, and we want the text description to occupy 50% of this area. We want the height of each cell to be a certain size in centimeters, and we want to use a certain font, etc. So what we're going to do here is we're going to choose now which entries to put in here. We can make new ones individually, but the best thing is choosing the generate legend entries from icons task, yet another different wand icon, and we're going to choose them. We could choose all of them that exist in our library. We could have only the ones that have got come from a particular sub project, or only visible in the current view, or only the ones that we've preset that we want to legend, or just the ones that we want. So I'm going to choose them manually, and we had the blockade one, we had the commissioning, power commissioning one, we had the design one, and then we got into the OLE section. So we had the CATCOM wiring, the augering, the masts, switching tensor. I think that was it. So we could always come back and add some more. We also need to click on this one so that we inherit the task template name. And so there you've got the entries, which we can change the size of if we want to leave a spare one or close them all up. And maybe we want to review our settings again. So maybe I want to make that 75% so I can get all the text in, or maybe that's a bit too aggressive and I go back to 65. But now I need to maybe reduce the font size so we can get it all in, or I can just type 9 if I want it to be somewhere in between. So just for this, I can adjust the name of it, so I can edit it here. I can say, well, we'll just abbreviate that to make the situation better presentationally, and maybe now we could say we only need 60% of that. So that's pretty good. It would be good to have a item at the top to say what it is. So again, we're going to do that with using a text annotation. Clicking on that, we're going to draw a box in there, and the text we're going to put in that box is just going to say legend, and we're going to choose a bigger font, say 16, and then we can reposition that. So we've got the image that will be produced, and we can then add the things that we might have added before. So we could, for example, we could then have our logo, so we can choose that. We can have no scaling in the top right. So up here we can put in any of the items we've used before, either from a file on disk or from our own logo. Again, remembering if we click on the keep proportions, then it makes it keeps the width and height ratio regardless of the size. And if I scroll to the bottom, we can also include a legend. So we could do that making text boxes ourselves. So we can, so there's a popular technique where we can give it a surround and maybe a smaller piece of text. Because then if we don't do it by text box, if we press F8, we can reference the data within this file. So I can inherit the project name, for example, so I don't have to retype anything. So it's actually a good technique to build up a little title block built up of text boxes. But the way that we showed you in the course was to insert another graphic object, scale both ways, connect it to the bottom right, so that when we draw that box and let go, we can insert an OLE object, a spreadsheet that's already exists. So we need to create it from an existing file and browse to find that file, which was in the add-ons folder and called title details. So this is now going to open Excel in the background, and Excel is going to paint that cell in there. We can either double click on a blue editing handle or on the OLE objects, click on the open dialog. It's going to open Excel. So this is NWEP design section 6C only. So that's our headings in there, and we've got that information already set up. So we're all good to go. Any change we make in one area will be reflected in another. So if I were to change that, and that date is changed, if we look at it then in here, that would also have been changed if it was in view. So so there you go. So that's how you do create a new view, and it's a useful technique to have different views for different sections. You can copy and paste a view. So if we wanted to do 6D, we could reproduce this and just change the distance range and the date range, and it would be so much quicker than creating the first one. Anyway, I hope that's helpful. Let me know if I can help further.